The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned into the PA Power Podcast, College Edition, featuring Tristan Warner, Mason Beckman, and Super Rob Waltko. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
Pennsylvania wrestling fans, welcome back. Thanks for being with us. You are now tuned in to the PA Power College Wrestling Podcast. I'm Tristan Warner, joined today again by Rob Waltko. This is episode 2. We thank you again for stopping by. Those of you who listened last week, Cole Matthews from Pitt joined us on the program. And this week we are lucky to be joined by Lock Haven 2019 All-American Kyle Shoop. So that's a treat we have in store for you. Rob, for this week's episode, we're going to jump into some more team previews. We're going to go with the 4 PA schools that have now actually joined the Mid-American Conference for this year. So we will be previewing Lock Haven, Clarion, Edinboro, and Bloomsburg. And we will also continue our weight-by-weight preview. Last episode, we went through 125 to 157. So for this episode, we're going to go ahead and close out those 165 through 285. So we will preview the top 5 PA natives at each one of those upper weights. And then lastly, we're going to get into our flashback segment where we're going to reminisce over some memories or some history we have of these teams. And just a fair warning to the fans here. Been fighting off a little bit of a cold here this last week, so I'm going to do my best to not sniffle or cough into the microphone too much, but you never know. You've been warned now. Rob, go ahead and take it away.
Before I jump into Lock Haven, just one small correction I want to make. Last week we had indicated that Luke Pletcher was going to be at 133 in our preview. It looks like he's at least wrestling off or wrestling in the Ohio State pre-match, whatever you want to call it, at 141 pounds. Sounds like that might be a permanent move for him, as well as DeSanto. Last week we kind of left the door open on that. It seems like due to some information we've gathered from our Hawkeye correspondent here at PA Power that it might be DeSanto 33, Murin 41, with Teasdale taking a red shirt. Again, we're not perfect, and we'll try to correct these things as we learn more information, but take it easy on us, I guess. But jumping into our previews, we're going to start with Lock Haven. Lock Haven's had a great last few years. They are coached by Scott Moore, assistant coaches Nate Carr and Ronnie Perry, volunteer coaches Rob Weichel and Ryan Solomon. We did already touch on a few of their lightweights earlier in our last episode. We talked about Luke Warner from Beth Liberty, DJ Fellman from Warren, PA, ranked number 10, and then Shoop, ranked number 6, who we're actually going to talk to later today. So rather than be redundant, we're going to jump into 149 and 157. 149, it looks like it could be a potential roster battle for them. They have Brock Port there, and Jonathan Ross is listed at 157, but he was the 149 starter for much of last year, so I'm reading the tea leaves here. I could be completely wrong. But WrestleStat, like I said, has Porter as the starter. He was their postseason starter last year, finishing up third in the EWL rather, with a 20-13 record. Ross started the year as the starter, was the starter for a good portion of the year, and actually has a win over Port 14-4. Like I said, WrestleStat has him up, but he was 19-11 last year. I think this could be a potential roster battle for them. 57, they have a 2-time returning national qualifier, which leads me to think that maybe Ross goes down, again, reading the tea leaves. But Alex Clucker, he's a 2-time national qualifier out of East Pennsboro High School, 21-11 record last year, won the EWL last year and the year before. He hasn't earned that spot or gotten that automatic bid, to my knowledge, but keeps winning the conference. This year, the MAC may be a little bit more difficult than winning the EWL, but I think he's going to improve on that. I would expect to see him back at the NCAA tournament this year. He's a solid kid. He's very, very tough, and by all means is someone that they're looking to be a leader. He's a senior along with a few of these other guys, so I think they're expecting some big jumps from him. Tristan, have you given much thought or paid much attention to these guys in the past?
Yeah, actually I have. Funny you say that. I actually have kind of personal ties, I guess you could say, to all 3 of them. I grew up at the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club in the State College area with Mitchell Port, so Brock obviously quite a bit younger than me, but comes from Bellefonte, which is a team that's kind of, put some good guys out there, individually at least. And then Jonathan Ross is from just down the street from me down here, where I went to high school at Cumberland Valley. grew up wrestling at Iron Eagle Wrestling Club with his brother Zach Ross and his other brother Jared Ross. So Jonathan's the youngest of the three, and he had some big success in high school. He even, I think, was a runner-up at Fargo one year. So he's had success on the national stage in high school, and looking to find that year to put it together in college. I know he's definitely won some good matches in college, but he hasn't necessarily stayed in the lineup and made the a postseason run yet. But both Port and Ross are tough kids. They're both kind of young guys still, trying to figure it out. And then at 157, Alex Clucker, now a two-time national qualifier. He's also from, literally miles away from my high school at Cumberland Valley. And I actually coach his brother right now as a volunteer coach at Shippensburg University, Division II. So Clucker is a guy that kind of blossomed in college. Maybe people didn't see it coming from his high school credentials, but he's really gotten big and strong for the weight class at 157, and with great workout partners in the room, he's really turned the corner. And I'm going to go ahead and just jump right up to 165. Excuse me. WrestleStat has Caleb Clymer listed as the starter, and he is a, let's see here, 2018 PIAA state champ, and he was a three-time PA state placer. I believe he put together about a 13-5 record last year as a redshirt. Went through his results, and he had a couple quality wins, but not anything that jumps off the page. But as a redshirt, you mostly wrestle in opens anyway, and you don't necessarily cross paths with some of those top 20 guys. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how his season shakes out if he is indeed the starter at 165. But like I've said, Lock Haven is just, they really are on the rise, and especially in those middleweights, they've had 4 All-Americans in the last 4 years, I would say, with Dan Neff, Ronnie Perry, Chance Marsteller, and Kyle Shoop. So there's definitely not a shortage of talent for him to work out with. And then at 174, another District 3 product, Jared Segrist. He was 24-19 last season as a junior. He is a guy that's been around for a while now that he's entering his senior season. So he has yet to make it to the NCAA tournament, but obviously put together a winning record last year. So he's a guy that you'd have to think Lock Haven is at least banking on to at least make a trip this year and get a bid. And then at 184, he enters the season ranked 12th, now a senior, Corey Hazel. He's out of Penns Valley, which is also District 6. He was an NCAA qualifier last year. He entered the tournament as the number 16 seed. He went 2-2, so he did get 2 wins under his belt at NCAAs, and that's always a good thing, going into the next year, having not only been to the tournament already, but having gotten your hand raised there. I think that speaks volumes. So, he kind of beat who he was supposed to beat at the tournament. He beat Andrew McNally from Kent State and Tate Samuelson from Wyoming, but he fell to the top seed, Miles Martin, by major decision in the round of 16, and then lost to Nebraska's All-American Taylor Venz 13-7. So he comes in ranked 12th, which, the top 12 rankings would suggest that he is at least predicted to be in the blood round. So he's clearly, just by his ranking alone, he's an All-American contender.
Yeah, I think of these 3 guys, Hazel's definitely the top dog. He scores a lot of points. I've been impressed watching him. I know last year he beat Dupre early to start the year, which I was impressed with because that kid's a stud out of Binghamton. But definitely looking for some big things out of these guys. Moving on to 197, Parker McClellan from Altoona looks to be the starter. Last year, Luke McGonigal was the starter from Clearfield, and he ended up transferring to Mercyhurst for whatever reason. Not sure why, but he's gone. Parker's from Altoona, like I said. He was 20-16 last year, mostly in tourneys, did compete in a few duels. He got some good experience where he got 35 matches under his belt, or 36 rather, which is important, but they're going to need him to be a little bit better than last year to get some production out of this weight. Heavyweight, you got a Whitfield guy, Isaac Reed from Kiski area, Pennsylvania state champ. Looking at his record last year, he was only 16-13 exclusively in tournament action. I'll be honest, I expected him to do a little bit better or have a little bit more promising results, but you never know. Maybe he got homesick, was just getting used to training D1 or what, but I think his upside is there. He's very big, very good athlete. He could really surprise people this year, and I think take a big jump. Just from watching him in high school, I was always really impressed with him. He lost 4-3 to Matt Voss from George Mason, who was a perennial top 20 guy. That shows that he can at least compete with those guys. So I think that Reed could be a real sneaker this year. Coincidentally, looking over this lineup, I didn't realize it until we got all the way through, Tristan. Every guy on their team is from Pennsylvania or a Pennsylvania native. That's pretty cool. It makes you want to cheer for them a little harder.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a homegrown team, and it's special that they're all from Pennsylvania, but a lot of them are guys that weren't even necessarily monster recruits, like Kyle Shoop, who we're going to speak to later, Alex Clucker, who we just talked about. These guys are guys that, probably weren't heavily recruited at the Division I level, and they kind of came up through the ranks and worked their way, and then just over time, put in the work and had good workout partners. You talked about Ronnie Perry a couple years ago in the NCAA finals. He was a guy who I think took 7th at PA State's one time, and it might have been at 106 or 113. So you're talking about guys that, weren't jumping off Flo's big board, but they are at Lock Haven, and they're no joke.
That kind of fits the coaching staff, though, too, right? I mean, Scott Moore was tough in high school, but I don't think he was a blue chip and comes out and he's an absolute monster in college.
No, I don't think either one of the Moore brothers ever actually won a state title. I might be wrong on that. I distinctly remember watching, I think, Scott lose in the finals to Mike May from Derry. You want to correct me on that, Rob?
I remember Mike. He was a stud in high school, and I think he went to Pitt and didn't do a whole lot. But, the Moores, I think they were always tough. Everyone knew them as tough, hard-nosed kids, but the success they had in college was definitely a surprise.
Anything else you want to say about Lock Haven before we move on to Clarion?
No, I'm looking forward to talking some Clarion wrestling. That's where my brother wrestled. All
right, so Clarion, head coach Keith Ferraro, assistants. This just came up on Intermat a couple weeks ago. They just announced 2 assistant coaches. Nate Kreiser was an All-American at Campbell a few years ago. He'll be a lightweight coach, obviously. And then Malik McDonald from NC State. He was a pretty solid upper weight for them. So they nicely filled out their need for a lightweight coach and an upper weight coach. I'm going to go ahead and dive into the lightweights here. Jake Gramacki for Clarion at 125. He is now at least a fifth-year senior, maybe a sixth, as he got a medical redshirt last year. He was an EWL runner-up a couple years ago to Sean Russell from Edinboro, and then he did eventually make the NCAA tournament. So he hasn't wrestled in a few years, but the last time he did, he posted a 21-9 record and qualified. So you'd have to think that he's going to be a solid guy in this conference at 125. And I also got to throw out, if you go on Clarion's roster, it does appear that he has his hair dyed pink in the roster pick. So bonus points and kudos to him for that. That's a bold move. Moving up to 133, probably going to see Seth Colino as the starter again. He went 16-13 last year as a true freshman out of Bald Eagle area. The season previous to that, he was a state finalist in AAA at 132. He's going to be backed up by a fifth-year senior in Rashawn Cooley from Williamsport, who had also started in the lineup previously. So unless Colino redshirts and Cooley takes the spot back, I would think we're going to see Colino. But he's a guy who's looking to improve and bounce back after taking the normal freshman lumps, but put together a respectable season. And then at 141 and 49, kind of the heart of Clarion's lineup, I guess. Taylor Orts, he's a redshirt junior now. He's out of Brookville. Actually, both these guys are out of Brookville. He went 8-5 before succumbing to a season-ending injury last season, but 2 years ago, he posted a 26-12 record and qualified for the NCAAs as the EWL runner-up, up a weight at 149. So he exited the tournament pretty quickly with losses to Matt Kolodzik from Princeton, who's been now a 2 or 3-time All-American, and Sammy Krivas from UVA, who's also a Pittsburgh guy that we talked about last episode. But nonetheless, Orts comes in ranked this year by Flo and looking to drop down a weight class and make another run to the NCAA tournament. And at 149, Brock Zackerl, he comes in ranked number 4th. We talked about him in our weight-by-weight preview last week, but he went 13-2 last year before ending his season with an injury. But he comes in with a career record of 126-20. And Rob, I kind of talked about this last week when I said that, I remember Zackerl being a guy that always comes to the tournament with a really good record. And I said maybe his only drawback is just that he doesn't have that tough of competition during the year. And I did look it up, and he's never lost more than 5 matches in a season. So, he's had dominant records going into the NCAA tournament. It's just, he gets there. He made it to the blood round in 2018 as a 7th seed, but he ran up against guys like Jaden Ironman in the quarters and Kevin Jack in the blood round. So when you run up against those hammers like that, He fell short that time, but looking to get over the hump this year in his final season. What do you think of these first 4 weights, Rob, with Clarion?
Yeah, so we've talked about Brock a good bit. I did notice that they're at Vegas this year, which is a stacked bracket for him. Someone tweeted out all the ranked guys, so I think he'll definitely be pushed. But Orts, I really like him. I mean, before getting hurt last year, he snagged a win over Chad Redd in Vegas. So I think he's someone to really look out for this year. And, assuming he can hold that weight. And I listened to a podcast with Zackrell not long ago, but he said Orts' weight has come down. He maybe will move up to 49 when Brock's gone, but I expect that Orts is going to have a big year. Moving on, we're going to look at some of these middleweights. We have Trevor Elflin by way of Father Judge High School and Drexel University. He's someone that Joe and I talked about a lot last year in our preview. He was nearly a qualifier as a true freshman despite never placing in the PA tournament. Really had a good freshman year. Last year battled some weight issues, had issues making 149. I think he missed weight at that tournament. Ended up wrestling 74 for a dual meet. And, transferred here to Clarion, maybe needs a fresh start. But he's someone I think could sneak up on people. I think that he has potential. He showed that as a freshman. And working out with Zackrell every day certainly can't hurt. 65, you have Jack Piora. He's an Ohio native. Realistically, this guy's a 500 wrestler in his career. 31 and 32 between 57 and 65. Very limited action in duels. Avery Shea, per WrestleStat, is set to redshirt. Shea is probably a guy that, if he were to bump up to 65, he was there 57 last year, would win this spot. We'll see what happens here. I don't think this is really set in stone for them by any means. Max Wallabaugh, he's a guy that I really like. He was a top 100 recruit. He's out of Florida. Career record's only 25 and 25, so he hasn't had a ton of success in college yet, but he's very good in Greco. He was in the finals at the junior trials last year. Clearly has a lot of skills, just hasn't translated to college/folk style yet. But I think he's someone that he can do well in national tournaments in Greco, freestyle, whatever it is. You can translate. It shows that, if you can win, you can win, I think. So he's someone that I expect to possibly take a jump this year. And, between these weights, Elflin, Wallabaugh, there's a lot of talent there. It's just they have to start producing. Tristan, what are your thoughts on these 3 guys?
I was going to say the same thing you did about Wallabaugh. I just remember him coming out of high school as a pretty top-ranked guy. And I remember he was pretty good on the Greco circuit. And coming from Florida, there's a lot of good Greco guys. So you do have to question sometimes if, that always translates to the college style. But, I'm a little surprised to see his career record being that low because I know that he's been around for a little bit. And I've seen his name in and out of the lineup. But, it's a matter of time before some of those guys put that stuff together. Maybe he was at the wrong weight or whatever. But 57, 65, especially 65 and 74 are probably Clarion's weaker weights, I would say, just based on their career records. But, that's areas to improve for them this year, and hopefully they will do that. 184, Clarion, looks like Shea Bloom will be the starter. He's actually a local guy. He wrestled at both DuBois and Kerwinsville, which, for those who know, the PA state geographically, that's right down the road from Clarion. He was a 2-time PA placer and posted a 15-6 record last year. Wrestled in 2 dual meets, bouncing between 174 and 197. Didn't necessarily have any marquee wins, but he's kind of another guy like we just talked about with Wallabaugh. It'll be interesting to see if he turns the corner this year. And it's interesting that he does have very good workout partners because 197, Clarion, one of their better guys in the lineup, Greg Bolzak, he comes in ranked number 23 in the nation as a redshirt junior from South Park, a AA school in Pennsylvania also. He's already been to the NCAA tournament 2 times. Last season, he actually got upset at EWLs twice and got an at-large bid. But nonetheless, he posted a 17-8 record, went 11-1 in dual meets and 6-0 in the EWL dual meets. So, he had a big win over Tom Slay. So, Bolzak is a guy that's going to be looking to climb the ranks and make his 3rd straight trip to the NCAA tournament. And then at heavyweight, this was interesting, Rob. If I'm reading this correctly, Ty Bagoli, who is a local guy for me out of District 3 Exeter, wrestled at 184 last year, but it looks like he's making the jump all the way up to heavyweight. So that's interesting to keep an eye on because often you do see guys who are maybe not 84-pounders, but maybe undersized heavyweights do a good job. If they're more athletic, they're quicker, they're in better stamina. So it'll be interesting to see Bagoli going up 2 weight classes, see how he shakes out at heavyweight.
No, I definitely think Bagoli could be a force to be reckoned with at heavyweight. Yeah, he placed at the junior team trials last year. I'm actually in a fantasy league with his dad, so I have to say really nice things about him. But I expect improvement out of him for sure. Jump into Edinboro. Current coaches, they got Matt Hill, Sean Boyle, Ernest James, and Andrew Church as the assistants. The Edinboro coaching tree is pretty wild, though. If you look at it, you got Matt Hill coaching at Edinboro, Jim Gibson at VMI, Lou Rosselli at Oklahoma, Tony Roby at VT, and Alex Clemson at Maryland. That's 5 Edinboro grads that are head coaches of Division I programs. Does that not just jump off the map at you, Tristan, for how small they are? That's incredible.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was saying about Lock Haven, how, you look at the Big 10 and Big 12 and those kind of schools that in other sports, Lock Haven and Edinboro, I mean, honestly, those schools probably don't even know where that school is or have probably never heard of it. Only in a sport like wrestling where PA is just so deep and so talented do you have schools like Edinboro and Lock Haven that are, going out there at NCAAs and beating guys from Oklahoma State and Ohio State. It's crazy, but that just speaks to PA's depth.
Yeah, so jumping into their roster, I'm going to take away 125 through 41. 25, they have Lucas Rodriguez. He's a Florida native. He was 11-14 last year. He wrestled, or he was their guy, their starter for the AWL, but medically forfeited out. I don't know if he missed weight, got hurt, or what, but was 2-2 in dual action. Richie Gomez from New York, he was 14-25 last year. He ended up getting 2 wins at the EWL, where he avenged 2 losses from the dual meets. So you always like to see that. Whether or not this guy's going to be in the national finals is one thing, but he clearly improved throughout the year, which speaks to Hill and the coaching staff. Carmine Ciotti, or Nate Hagan, at 41. Ciotti is an Erie McDowell grad. He first started his career at Gannon and transferred to Edinboro. Was a runner-up at the EWL. Lost some close matches to Fellman and Bentley. He's probably a fringe qualifier. He's someone that they could probably use in the lineup to keep winning, but he's one of their better guys. I will say this, that going into the preview last year, Joe and I were looking over, and a lot of 25 and 33, these guys had very little experience. So you didn't really expect a lot out of them, but they're in their second year in the lineup now. So again, whether or not they're going to light the world on fire is one thing, but you have to expect improvement out of someone that's been in the lineup for a year.
Yeah, just getting a couple years of college wrestling under your belt, I mean, it can't hurt. That's the biggest thing, making the transition and getting in the lineup. Even when you're a redshirt, like I was saying, you go to like the Cleveland State Open and stuff like that, and you wrestle other college guys, and that's great. But getting thrust in the lineup, getting used to traveling and making weight all those times, and wrestling guys that are other Division I college starters, that just does a lot for you. So, some of these guys do eventually blossom and get to have success at the college level, but it doesn't always happen overnight. That's going to take me up to 149 for Edinboro. We got a 5th-year senior here. He's out of Sagertown, Pennsylvania. I've actually found a handful of guys from Sagertown here at Edinboro. Tyler Vath, he went 8-8 last season. He had 2 bonus point wins over John Ross from Lock Haven, who we spoke about earlier. And he also got a major decision win over Luke Kemmerer from Pitt, who we discussed last week, who could be a potential starter for them at 149. So those are 3 quality wins for him. But aside from that, nothing really major, just an 8-8 record and looking to improve upon that. He's also going to be backed up by Tyler Griffiths, who is a sophomore he's out of Southmoreland, Pennsylvania, and he's a transfer from Seton Hill, which is Division II. He was a 3-time PA AA state placer. So, as we go through this Edinboro lineup, we're going to see a lot of guys that came out of Pennsylvania in Class AA who, have multiple visits to the PA state tournament and multiple appearances on the podium. Moving up to 157, Peter Pappas. He's a redshirt sophomore from New York. He actually went the opposite route as typical and wrestled his true freshman year and then redshirted last year. So in 2017 and 18, when he was in the lineup, he went 11-8 before getting hurt. He was a PSAC finalist, and his only loss there was to NCAA runner-up Ronnie Perry. Last year as a redshirt, he went 18-4, so a solid record. maybe didn't wrestle, starters from most colleges, but not a bad record. And he's probably one of their stronger middleweights, I would say.
Yeah, I actually watched Pappas wrestle a little bit in high school. He used to battle with Jake Hinkson, who's a North Allegheny grad. Yeah, he's a tough kid. I think he was in the New York State Finals 3 times. A guy like that, he's a good addition to any lineup. I mean, he's obviously a D1 ready guy and is someone that, will probably benefit from working out with Matt Hill, who's also a 57-pounder. Moving to some of those middleweights, you got Fritz Hohen from Massachusetts. Last year, he was one of the lone guys with any experience going into the year. End of the year, 8-11. His experience, he's in his 3rd year now. You hope that he can benefit from that and gain some more steam. 74, Jacob Oliver. He's probably the best guy they have. Was an All-American at U23s last year, was a national qualifier. They're going to need someone that's going to make a leap for them, whether it's him or someone else. But, to get them back to where they were, someone like Oliver probably needs to get on the stand sooner than later. He did get a major decision win over Ethan Smith from Ohio State, who was their starter and looks to be their starter again this year. So I think he's someone that they can build the program around and hopefully will make big jumps for them. Tristan, do you have an opinion on Oliver or Fritz?
Oliver was a really tough kid in high school. I remember when he came out, he was ranked very highly in the nation. He was a pretty sought-after recruit. So, he qualified for NCAAs last year, like you said, went 0-2. But, he's a young guy still, and like we just talked about, he's figuring it out still, and he's just going to slowly climb the ranks, I think, and he's going to be really good for Edinboro. And that brings us up to 184. Cody Mulligan looks to be the guy. He's a redshirt freshman. He is also out of Sagertown. He was 11-3 last year as a redshirt, and 2 results that really jumped off the page to me were he had 2 battles with Gavin Hoffman, who is a Montoursville, PA product. He was a big-time recruit in Ohio State redshirt last year. We're going to talk about him just in a few minutes in the weight-by-weight preview, but Mulligan lost to Hoffman twice, one time 7-2, and then later in the year he lost to him 4-2. So he seems to at least have given him a pretty good match, and I know he was the stud in high school, so that could be interesting for Edinboro with a young guy coming out who's not really, probably not really scouted or thought highly of yet, but good things could be coming for them there at 84. And then at 197, another Sagertown product who's a veteran guy, a redshirt senior. He's ranked number 21 by Flow heading into his senior year, is Dylan Reynolds. And he went 32-12 last year, wrestled a ton of matches, had several quality wins over a couple NCAA qualifiers. He beat Sawyer Root from Citadel. He beat Greg Bolsack from Clarion, and he also beat Ethan Laird from Ryder. So he's a tough guy who, they'd have to think he's going to be at the tournament again and hopefully score some points for them. And lastly, at heavyweight, Edinboro's starter will probably be John Spalding. He is a junior out of Ohio. He was 21-15 last year. Something that was impressive to me about him, looking at his stats from last year, he wrestled Thomas Haynes from Lock Haven a couple times last year, I noticed. When they wrestled in the regular season dual meet, he got majored, and he got majored maybe at the PSAC tournament too, but then they wrestled at the EWL, and he lost 1-0. So, with Ernest James as his heavyweight workout partner, as his coach, you'd have to think he's making some improvement. And, he definitely seems like he closed the gap on Haynes there at the end of the year.
No, it seems to be the trend with these guys is, they wrestled their best at the EWLs. Whether they came away with big wins or not, they closed the gap. And I think that's a testament to the job they're doing. Mulligan, he was a big-time recruit. I think he had every reason to leave whenever everyone else is splitting, and he stuck around. So he obviously believes in Hill, and he could be a big part of their success moving forward. You ready to jump ahead to Bloomsburg, Tristan?
Yeah, let's dive right in. The Huskies.
Cool. Yeah, so we got head coach Marcus Gordon, assisted by Russ Hughes, and newly crowned assistant or hired assistant Steve Middich. Their best guy last year was probably Wiley Gerard. He was the reigning EWL champ, but they say he's redshirting on WrestleStat. I don't know if they want to just have him work out with Middich for a year to get better, but it sounds like he is going to, at least WrestleStat says he's not going to be in the lineup. Who's going to be taking those duties for at least this year is Tyrese Fleming, a true freshman from Liberty over in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. He was 3rd in the state as a junior. Had one loss going to the state tournament last year, but didn't place. He was small. He was a 13-pounder, so I wonder if he's going to be big enough. But, realistically, someone that was 3rd in the state in AAA is a pretty darn good recruit for anyone, especially where Bloomsburg is right now. So I think he could be a good wrestler for them. Josh Mason is listed as the starter via WrestleStat. He was a former District 11 champ. He spent last year in Nebraska but didn't have any matches. Or Sean Morum, who's from Maryland. He was their starter last year, ended up going 5-16 on the year. Tristan, have you given much credence to whether or not Gerard's actually redshirting, or have you watched much of Fleming or these other guys in the past?
I did not know that Gerard was redshirting, but that is interesting news. I do think Tyrese Fleming is a good kid. I coached at Cumberland Valley 2 years ago, and Ben Mon, who's now a two-time PA State placer for CV going into his senior year, he ran into Fleming in, I want to say, like the consolation semifinals maybe. And Fleming was a big, long 106-pounder, and he was a guy that came in as like a Northeast 3 or something like that. You know, he wasn't necessarily thought to really shake that bracket up, but I think I want to say he lost early and then went on a rampage back through the contests and ended up getting third or fourth. And he was a tough kid to wrestle. I think he was pretty good on top. I remember him just being a long, lanky guy that was stingy, and he was tough. So be interesting to see him get into the college world now and be thrust right into the starting lineup. And I'm going to go ahead and move us up to 141. It looks like Bloom's starter will be Aaron Coleman again. He started last year as a true freshman. He's out of New Jersey. He posted a 7-22 record last year. Another guy that was kind of thrown to the wolves as a freshman. So he'll look to improve upon that this year. And at 149, some new blood in there. Nick Rosengrant, he's a true freshman also. And he is coming from Saucon Valley in northeastern PA. He took 8th at PA States in AA last year. So couple young guys there at 41 and 49. Rob, you want to move us up to 157?
Yeah, we're looking at Nate Newberry from Biglerville. He's a two-time state place winner. Was 15 and 17 last year as the starter. 2 years prior, he was 11 and 28. So it seems like he's made progress for them. Be interesting to see if he can get above 500 this year. We have Alex Carita is the reigning starter from last year. He was 8 and 21. And they have Patrick O'Neill, who's coming in, who I don't know if they'll throw in the lineup or they'll redshirt him. He was a Pennsylvania place winner. He's probably their best option, but maybe someone they want to redshirt. Tristan, thoughts on these guys?
I don't know too much about these guys, I'm going to be honest. But if you're a PIAA placer, you never know. You could get in there in the college lineup, get some good workout partners. He's got Russ Hughes beating on him every day, so you never know. I'm going to go ahead and move us up to 174. Couple non-PA guys here in the lineup I noticed as I was compiling this lineup. Anthony Vetrano, he's a redshirt sophomore from New Jersey. He went 8 and 15 a season ago. And then at 184, Bloom, one of their better guys, now a redshirt senior, Trevor Allard. He was 27 and 11 last year. He's a New York product, and he went 5 and 2 at the Midlands. And he came away with 2 really close losses to Gavin Hoffman, who we just talked about, from Ohio State. And he also picked up a win over an NCAA qualifier in Bob Coleman from Oregon State. So he's definitely a guy you'd have to think that Bloom is banking on earning a bid this year. At least optimistically, they'd like to see him at the tournament. And moving up to 197, another New Jersey guy in Kyle Murphy. He is a senior now. He was 11 and 22 last year. He also beat Greg Bolsack from Clarion at the EWL. I'm not sure if Bolsack was sick or injured. He kind of had an uncharacteristic tournament there. But nonetheless, Kyle Murphy did beat him there. And Murphy also lost in a tiebreaker to Ryder's Ethan Laird, who was an NCAA qualifier, who's a tough guy. So he's shown signs of promise, so hopefully he'll improve upon that record this year. Yeah,
and ending their lineup, we have Jarrett Walters, who was their starter last year. He's 2 and 7 on the year, but I think probably their best option is Bruce Graber. Started 2 years ago. He's a 500 wrestler in his career, but was a 2-time state place winner from Neshaminy. Someone that's probably one of the better guys in their lineup. After going through these previews, Tristan, I'll say this, that, Lock Haven, I think, is the cream of the crop within the PSAC. And what did we notice about them? All PA guys. So if I'm these other schools, I need to start notching more of the local kids instead of going out of state for talent.
Yeah, you don't got to tell me twice. I'm PA power through and through.
All right, so wrapping up our team previews. Now let's jump into our segment of our favorite memories from each particular team. I'll start us off with Clarion, or with Edinboro, rather. The first memory I remember with those guys, or not the first, but maybe the best, is Jared King winning a national title. He started his career at Oklahoma. He was an Angry Fish, local Whitfield guy, and when he came out and won that title, I think it was my freshman year in college, I was just blown away and really happy for him. Tristan, what do you remember most about Edinboro?
I would say probably my best memory watching Edinboro would be I always liked Gregor Gillespie a lot. He was always just like a fun guy to watch. His style was fun. He had great wrestling swag, if you will. And he took down Dustin Schlater in the NCAA semis one year. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. I would say that was probably, the place went berserk. Anytime an NCAA champ loses, but especially to a guy from a small school, an Edinboro guy taking down a guy from the Big Ten, that was pretty cool. Place went wild.
Yeah, no, that was great. Moving back to Lock Haven, that was actually the first camp I ever went to as a kid. And I can't remember how old I was, but I remember seeing Kerry Collette t-shirts and thinking it was really cool that Lock Haven, this small school, had this guy that was so cool that, Nike was making a shoe for him and they were making t-shirts.
That is pretty cool. I went to the Lock Haven camp once too, and I think the Bonomo brothers, one of them is like an artist, and he was drawing pictures on like poster board with a Sharpie. That was pretty cool too. I would say my Lock Haven one, I don't know that I have just one, but I would say just watching Ronnie Perry, a local guy from Solanco down here in District 3. Like I said, I think he was a one-time state 7th placer at 113, being the NCAA finals 5 years later. That's just insane. So I would say him, Chance, watching Chance make a comeback. He's a District 3 guy too. Become an All-American. Dan Neff, an All-American from District 3, and now Kyle Shoop. I would just say the District 3 to Lock Haven pipeline would be my favorite.
Clarion, very similar to me. A lot of memories there. I used to go to camp there as well. For me, it was probably James Fleming. He was teammates with my brother. They came out the same year. And everyone in Western PA knew that there was this crazy kid from West Mifflin that had this weird move and was funky as all heck. And him jumping on the college scene and becoming like a superstar overnight with that head pinch or whatever you want to call it, and just his funky style. I don't know. It was really cool for me to see that. Tristan, have you watched much or been around Clarion much? What do you think about those guys?
I'm just gonna have to throw out there real quick, as someone who had to wrestle James Fleming 2 or 3 times in high school in a move that's now illegal. I'm gonna have to say I'm not such a huge fan of that memory of yours. Sorry, Rob. Definitely a lethal move, but I mean quite literally a lethal move. You cannot breathe when he does that move, and now it's illegal. So there you have that. No sour grapes on my end though. I'm going to have to go with probably Beksad Abdurakhmanov taking 3rd place about 2012, I want to say, 7 years ago. I was actually in the bracket. I clearly was not wrestling on day 3 of the tournament, but he had an amazing tournament. His only loss of the whole thing was to David Taylor in the semis, who went on to win it. So he came all the way back, and I think he beat Peter Yates from Virginia Tech, and then Kyle Blevins from App State for 3rd. He just pretty much went on a rampage and had a great tournament. I would say see a Clarion guy out there wrestling for 3rd. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think he scored the first takedown on Taylor, but after that didn't go well for him. Last school that we talked about, Bloomsburg. I don't have one particular memory about them. They've had some great teams maybe before our time, but I remember seeing them at the Navy Classic when I was a true freshman at Bucknell, and they had a bunch of like 5th-year seniors, dudes all tatted up that just looked like beasts. And I remember just like in that moment being like these guys aren't that good if you look at it from like a national perspective, but they are tough. And this is what Division I wrestling is, and this is how tough you have to be to compete at this level. And just getting a taste of that and watching those guys and saying like, these are some bad dudes, regardless if they're ranked 18th in the country or 4th. It's a tough team, and that was kind of a wake up to me of what Division I wrestling is all about.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that you said that because, a lot of times it's all about the glamour and the flash and all that, but especially in PA, there's a lot of guys that just, they're just hard-nosed, tough dudes. And I remember what you're talking about. I was probably in like middle school at that time, but I remember what you're talking about. Those guys were tough and mean, and there's been a lot of high school teams over the years I can think of that kind of remind me of that, like Easton in Northampton, that Lehigh Valley area. There's a lot of just hard-nosed, tough kids. But anyway, for Bloomsburg, for me, I'm going to have to give a shout-out here to my high school teammate, Bryce Bustler. He's a Cumberland Valley product. I went to Bloom, a couple-time NCAA qualifier, but I would have to say first tournament of his senior year, he upset in a monumental upset, returning NCAA champ Kendrick Maple from Oklahoma. That kind of sent tremors through the wrestling world, and special shout-out to him. I would have to say that's my favorite Bloomsburg memory.
Cool. So moving to some current guys, let's get into our preview, 165 through heavyweight.
I'll jump in at 165. It's kind of where we left off last week. So 165, your top guy, Vincenzo Joseph, redshirt senior now, going for his 3rd NCAA title, obviously. Took down Isaiah Martinez from Illinois as a freshman and a sophomore. lost in the finals last year to Mekhi Lewis from Virginia Tech, who is now taking an Olympic red shirt. So Chenzo looking to close out his career with a third NCAA title here. Your second top-ranked Pennsylvania guy is Josh Shields. He's a redshirt senior out of Franklin Regional. He is for Arizona State. He's now I believe, two-time All-American, looking to be a three-time All-American. He dropped a close one to Chenzo in the semis this year, 3-2. So he obviously, I'm sure, has goals of becoming an NCAA champ this year. Pretty tough weight class. He comes in ranked 6th by Flow. Next, we have an interesting guy, Austin Matthews. We interviewed his brother Cole last week. He is a redshirt senior, excuse me, but he is probably like 25, 26 years old now. He was even in an NCAA bracket with me when I was a junior, and he was a freshman, so he's got to be pretty old now. He was Reynolds High School product. He went to Clarion, then he transferred to Edinboro. Then he was banged up, missed a year or two, and then now he's finishing his career at Northern Colorado, of all places. He comes in ranked 15th. It'll be very interesting to see if he's able to pick up where he left off. Tons of talent, extremely fun to watch, so that is definitely something to keep an eye on. 165 also, number 18 is Jake Wenzel. He's for Pitt, redshirt junior. He's out of South Park, PA, and we talked about him last week in our preview. A big, strong kid who was a big recruit coming out of high school, and see if he's ready to put it all together this year now that he's healthy. And our last guy at 165 is Cam Coy. He is a sophomore for UVA via Penn Trafford High School. He went 19-18 last year, made his first trip to the NCAA tournament as a freshman, but had a pretty tough draw. Had national champ Mekhi Lewis in the first round, and then lost to Demetrius Romero from, I believe, Utah Valley. So he's a tough Pittsburgh area kid. 3-time state champ, I want to say. So really strong high school pedigree, and just a freshman last year. Will be a redshirt sophomore this year. What do you think of the 65 class, Rob?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about Chenzo and Wenzel. Shields just as steady as they get. He's a hard-nosed, tough kid. I'd like to see him end his career on a high note. Getting as high as he can on that podium. And Arizona State's in a trophy hunt, so I think that a lot of that revolves around how he does.
Let's jump up to 174. You got Michael Kemmer from Iowa. I want to say on paper he's like a redshirt junior. I don't know if he gets an extra year because he was hurt, but he's gotten 3rd and 4th, so he's already a 2-time All-American. We've never seen him at this weight class, though. He's been at 157. He was kind of a Nolf nemesis. Didn't ever get the better of him, but he's making a jump all the way up to 174, so that will be interesting, but he comes in ranked number 3. And right behind him on his heels is ranked number 4, a redshirt sophomore from Bethlehem Catholic. That's Mikey Labriola, and he is for Nebraska. He was a 10 seed at NCAAs last year. Pulled a couple nice wins en route to the quarterfinals where he was pinned by Daniel Lewis from Missouri, who's a veteran guy. But on his way back through the backside, he beat Leidy from Purdue and Devin Skatska from Minnesota before losing close ones to Miles Amin from Michigan and David McFadden from Virginia Tech. So he ended up finishing 6th, but not too shabby for a redshirt freshman. Now looking to improve upon that as a sophomore. Then we take a little bit of a jump here. Our third-ranked guy is number 24, Jacob Oliver for Edinboro, who we just talked about. He went 0-2 last year, also had a kind of tough draw. Got Jordan Cutler from Lehigh in the first round. So he's looking to improve upon that as a sophomore. And then below that, Travis Stefanik from Princeton. He is a sophomore out of Nazareth. He made it to the NCAA tournament as well, but had a pretty tough draw. Got pinned by Daniel Lewis from Mizzou in the first round and then lost to Andrew Morgan from Campbell. And lastly, I kind of put 2 guys in here because I didn't know which one to not talk about, but we've already kind of mentioned both these guys in their team preview. Jared Segrist for Lock Haven, he's out of Manheim Central, and Greg Harvey from Pitt out of Boyertown. Both those guys are guys that have been around for a few years that are just looking, they've been on the cusp of qualifying but haven't quite made it yet. Anything you see special here at 174, Rob?
Yeah, I think both those guys at the top, Kemmer and Labriola, have a real shot to make the finals and challenge Mark Hall. Labriola, I said last year that he's someone that has the talent to win a national title. Maybe not right away, but I don't think everyone has that talent, and he does. So I'll be interested to see if he makes a big jump this year because he was up and down last year and had a really good tournament. And it'd be interesting to see if he can get himself in the finals this year.
Yeah, it's like we always say, especially as a freshman getting thrust in that lineup. You get the grind of that whole college season, especially with him. He's in the Big Ten, so I mean, that's as brutal as you get. The Division I, Big Ten wrestling schedule through January, and February, all those duels back to back to back. But he definitely put it together when it mattered and had a great tournament for a freshman. So we're going to move up to 184. Your top-ranked Pennsylvania native is Dakota Gear. He is from Oklahoma State via Franklin High School. He is ranked number 3 in the nation to start his redshirt junior season. This guy was the 26th seed at NCAAs. And, first he pulls off an upset over NC State's Nick Reenan. He then drops a heartbreaker to number 10 seed Sammy Colbray from Iowa State, but then he comes back through. He beats Max Lyon from Purdue. He beats Shakur Rashid, the 2nd seed from Penn State. I don't think anybody saw that coming. He beat Nino Bonacorsi, another super talented PA kid, in the blood round, and then ended up beating Zach Zavatsky for 7th. So probably an unforeseen tournament for Dakota Gear for people around the nation, but I would say those who have followed him in Pennsylvania coming up through high school, they know he was a big-time recruit. Started his career at Edinboro and transferred to Oklahoma State, so he's already all the way up to number 3 now as a junior. Ranked number 4 right behind him is Nino Bonacorsi, a redshirt sophomore from Pitt. We talked about him last week. He was in the blood round last year, made it all the way to the NCAA quarterfinals before dropping 2 heartbreakers in a row, but he's definitely a guy that you would have to think would be high up on the podium this year. And then we also talked about Corey Hazel for Lock Haven. He's a 5th-year senior, ranked number 12. As I said, he went 2-2 at the NCAAs, so he's on the cusp of cracking into the All-American conversation. And then we have 2 guys that are, I would say, probably the 2 most exciting guys to talk about maybe in this whole preview in terms of newcomers, I should say. Trent Hidley, ranked number 15 as a redshirt freshman, but, I mean, I would say everyone expects that ranking to rise very quickly. He comes from Mifflin County. He was a state champ 2 years ago in high school in Pennsylvania. His only 2 losses of his redshirt season last year came down at 174, and they both came at the Southern Scuffle to All-Americans. He lost to JoJo Smith from Oklahoma State and Dave McFadden from Virginia Tech in a tiebreaker. So, I mean, for a redshirt, that's pretty incredible, but that's not even at his real weight class. Looks like he's going to be up to 84. I think he's probably better off there. He's a strong kid, but he's very athletic too, and he's got tons of great technique, much like his brother. So Trent Hidley, I mean, the sky is the limit truly for him at this weight class. And lastly, 17th ranked Gavin Hoffman. He's a redshirt freshman out of Montoursville, now at Ohio State. I talked about him earlier in the episode as well. He went 25-3 as a redshirt last year. His only losses came to Wisconsin's Mason Reinhart at the Midlands. He lost to Drew Foster, the NCAA champ, last year, 12-2. And he lost just by 1 point to an All-American from Illinois, Emory Parker. Other than that, he racked up 25 wins and beat, I would say, at least 5 NCAA qualifiers. So he was a stud recruit coming out of high school, and Ohio State is ready for him to crack onto the podium too as a freshman. Rob, who jumps out at you at this weight? I mean, there's really tough young guys, and then there's a tough old guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a loaded weight. Hazel's the senior that, you wonder if he has that Lock Haven magic in him to make a run. I mean, honest to God, man, I wouldn't be surprised to see any of these guys wrestling Zahid in the finals Saturday night. Hazel's maybe, at least on paper, has the lowest ceiling. He hasn't produced to that level yet, but
I mean, yeah, you can't count those guys out. Look at Ronnie Perry. You never know. Lock Haven.
Yeah, I'm not counting out anyone from Lock Haven. And, Hidley and Hoffman are just beasts, especially Hidley. He had a really great summer placing at the Junior Worlds. Moving to 197, we'll start off with number 14 ranked John Jacobson from Stroudsburg High School. Every time I hear his name, I think of John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. Maybe I'm the only one, but it always gets caught in my head.
Well, I can promise you after you just said that, you're not going to be the only one anymore.
Yeah, so our listeners they'll be stuck with it now. But he was, he couldn't get in the lineup as a freshman. He was behind Chris Weiler. Ended up getting in last year. He was, in and out of the lineup, was 12-9, but was 2-2 at the NCAAs. He beat Honus in the first round, who ended up All-American. He's a blue-collar kid. He had to earn his way in the lineup. So I think guys like that definitely garner some attention. He didn't transfer. He didn't pout. He sat his freshman year and then got himself in. We'll qualify again this year. We'll see if he improves being in the lineup. Ethan Laird from Ryder. He's tough. He was 16-10 as a true freshman, 22-13 last year. Really showed some big improvements. Beat Loizo from Drexel last year, who beat him up in 18. Beat Woodley at the NCAAs, who beat him in the state finals. has a win over Weiler, who was round of 12. He's a big, strong kid. He's a dark horse. Ryder doesn't get a lot of attention. And, this isn't a New Jersey podcast, but this kid's legit. Keep an eye on him. Number 16, my guy, Jake Woodley, by way of North Allegheny High School, Boomer Sooner. Two-time Pennsylvania State champ, was 22-10 last year. Was a bit up and down. He lost a few matches I didn't think he should have, but ended up third in the Big 12. Had a really good February. Didn't have the best NCAAs, but beat Hokett twice last year. Was in the finals of the U23. Rather, he won the U23 and then lost the special wrestle-off to Bo. So he had a pretty good summer, and he's putting some size on. So he was a little bit undersized last year. No excuses, right? He still has to go out there and wrestle, but I expect him to have a good year. Greg Bolsack from Clarion, who we touched on from South Park, and Dylan Reynolds. These guys will contend to get to the tournament. And then Drew Phipps. He's unranked, but is a 2-year starter at Bucknell, returning NCAA qualifier. Was 1-2 at the NCAAs, beat up Rocco Kaywood, who was the 12 seed. So that's a nice win for him. Had Warner on his back late, got a couple takedowns versus Miklas. He's wrestled a good first period versus Miklas and a good third period versus Warner. So he's really close to punching through. I think this year he starts the year, he's unranked, but he's a top 20, top 24-ish guy. This is kind of a weird group for me, man. They're all pretty evenly matched, I'd say. It'd be nice to see one or two of them really take a step up. You got to throw Stout in that mix, too. I didn't want to talk about him because he was in our preview last week. But, does anyone really catch your eye here, Tristan?
I kind of agree with you. I think they all kind of do. I would say all of them. Number one, I think they're all Western PA, except for Jacobson. They're all Western PA kids, but it's like you said, they're not any of them have really separated themselves from each other. Just by their ranking alone, 14, 15, 16, they're all PA kids. Jake Woodley was obviously probably the biggest recruit out of all these guys, but he's still young, so he's still figuring it out. But wasn't he? You as a North Allegheny guy, you would know. Wasn't he pretty neck and neck with Warner coming out of high school? And then Warner's now ranked top 5 for Iowa.
He wasn't really that close with Warner in high school. He got beat by him 3 times. He lost to him in the Dapper Dan. It was relatively close. Warner kind of gassed out.
That's probably what I'm thinking
Woodley
of.
beat him when they were redshirt freshmen. Yeah, so he's beating that guy, and you know how it is, man. 97. A lot of these matches are 3-2, 4-3. So 1 or 2 takedowns and kind of just fixing your tactics makes a big difference. Let's move to heavyweight. A little bit of a light crowd for PA. You got Jordan Wood on here, who's a beast. He's a returning All-American. Lost in the semis of the NCAAs last year to Derek White. He's as solid as they come. He's 47-12 career. He's kind of I don't want to say leveled off, but to a degree where he loses to a lot of the same guys like Gable, Kassar, lost to Kirk Vliet at the U23s, but he doesn't lose bad matches. So, he's a guy that is really tough. He's been really good for a while. It'll be interesting to see if he can really take that next step and push for a title. You got Garrett Hoffman, ranked number 18 out of Montoursville. He's the Bucknell's heavyweight. He beat Anthony Kassar 2 years ago at 197. He qualified as a freshman for the NCAA tournament, and then he's been pretty dinged up. He hasn't really competed much the last 2 years. His last 5 losses have been by a combined 11 points, a lot of those in shootouts. So this guy can score. It'll be interesting to see if he can handle those big boys up at heavyweight. Joe Doyle, he is a 2X Pennsylvania State place winner out of Council Rock South. Teammates with Trampe, who we talked about last week, both at Binghamton and both from Council Rock South. He was 5th at the AWA after being seeded 9th. Didn't qualify, but had a good tournament. I expect him to make a jump this year and get to the tournament. Brandon Furman, he's an interesting one from Cannon McMillan. 24-13 his first 2 years. He's beaten Isaac Reed, who I said I'm bullish on, and Joe Doyle. He's a Pennsylvania State champ. Weird stat. I don't think Cornell's ever had a heavyweight All-American, so it'd be nice to see him be the first one to break through. He's certainly athletic enough. He started wrestling late, so I think his learning curve is certainly high. And then another Pennsylvania State champ. There's a lot of those guys out here that are PA champs but haven't really gotten that next step in college. Andrew Gunning, Bethlehem Liberty product at North Carolina. He hasn't started for them yet. He's 45-24 career. He lost a couple close matches last year to Stolen Cassiope, so hope he can make the best of his lineup chances this year. Tristan, do you have anything really to say about any of these guys?
Yeah, Jordan Wood's obviously a really solid guy. I just couldn't believe how young he was. For some reason, I had it in my head that he had to be like a 6th-year senior by now. Maybe I just followed him so closely coming up through high school and college. I got him mixed up, but he really is only a redshirt junior, and he was in the semis last year, so a really bright future for him. And he comes in ranked 3rd, obviously just behind the big two in Kassar and Gable. Gable Steveson. So, he's a really extremely tough guy at that weight, and you'd have to think on paper at least those two are going to be in the finals. But Wood is the next best guy at that weight class. I got to see Andrew Gunning wrestle a little bit in some open tournaments. I think when he was a freshman, he's definitely a tough guy too, and he comes from Beth Liberty, which is a stacked area in Lehigh Valley. So. And a PA AAA state champ. So he's probably a guy that comes in maybe ranked a little low, but at North Carolina, they're kind of another team that I think of like Lock Haven that Coleman Scott's doing a really, really good job. And they have a lot of guys coming up through that, are maybe overperforming what people think. So he's definitely one to keep an eye on at heavyweight.
Cool. So what do you think we give Kyle Shoop a call over in Lock Haven, PA?
I'm excited. District 3 guy from right down the road from me, Boiling Springs. Kyle Shoop, All-American last year at 141. Got another season left. Let's dial him up.
Okay, listeners, now we have a special treat. We have Kyle Shoop from Lock Haven, 2019 All-American on the horn. Kyle, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, so obviously we just previewed Lock Haven and their strong team going into this season, and wanted to grab their All-American to talk to him for a few minutes about the upcoming season, his success, and some other things as well. So, Kyle, I'll start us off. Obviously, you're from Boiling Springs. I was looking over your high school record and your past credentials, and noticed that their mascot is the Bubbler. Can you explain what in the world a Bubbler is? Because I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, so I know you guys are probably just following too. We just saw the legend Rod Wright step down for this season, and now we're seeing Trevor Byers take over. So I just also, while I'm live, I just want to say thank you, Rodney, for everything you've done for the program. You've done a great job there, and man, heck of a career. But the reason why Boiling Springs is called the Bubblers, if you actually come through our town, there's like a little lake that's probably less than 2 minutes from the school. But there's actually an underwater spring that feeds the lake, and it's all natural spring water, so you can drink out of it and stuff. That's kind of how we came to become the Bubblers. It's kind of a funny story. You just walk through the middle of town and you just see just a little spring, but there's a whole bunch of people there. We're also right on the Appalachian Trail and stuff, so pretty nice little rural area, but definitely named from the spring.
Kind of deceiving with. The great wrestlers you guys had, you'd think it'd be something a little bit more intimidating.
Yeah. You think I've always thought maybe the Boiling Springs Barracudas or just something a little bit different. But the Bubblers have produced, so definitely a lot of good guys coming out of Boiling Springs.
I got to jump in here real quick as a District 3 guy. I went to Cumberland Valley, which Kyle, is right down the road. And, yeah, I was fascinated by the whole Bubblers thing. I remember looking it up maybe 10 years ago. And Kyle, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I saw Boiling Springs was ranked second in the entire country it was a top 100 ranking in the whole country for most unique high school mascots.
Let's go.
I think number 1 was some team called the Fighting Artichokes. That's all I remember from the list. But the Bubblers were number 2.
Yeah, it's a unique little small town, but like I said, I always thought, the word on the street when we were in high school, we used to always talk about how bad being a bubbler really is. We're the bubble. We were the bubble that never popped, but that just never seemed to make sense. I'm kind of with you on the whole bubbler confusion a little bit.
So back to some stuff that you could probably talk about a little easier, or I guess have a little bit more pride in. You're a guy that really burst on the scene last year nationally. Guys in PA knew who you were, obviously. You're an animal on top. Your bonus rate has gone up every year since you've gotten in college. What have you done to get so good on top?
I think really what it's kind of been is I've been working on my top game over the summer, but just kind of it's really changed since I focused more on my feet. I would say definitely redshirt sophomore year around the time I decided to go from 49 to 41. But really, honestly, it's just been my neutral game that's taken my game up because I'm getting takedowns quicker. And my game plan from my freshman to senior year on top really hasn't changed at all. So I would just say that what's really made the difference in my game, and one of the big reasons why I was an All-American last year, was definitely just improving on my feet, getting that first takedown, and then going right to my turns. So I would definitely credit my success to getting better on top to just me putting the work in on my feet, just getting the best where I was weakest at. So,
Kyle, that kind of leads me into what my first question was. I don't know if you were old enough at the time to grow up watching Scott Moore wrestle in college, but I know I was a kid when Scott was in college, and he was dominant on top, just as a long dude who was mean. But also, I mean, he was exciting to watch on his feet too. He was launching guys all the time. How has he and his wrestling style? He kind of built like you. How has that kind of helped you in the room? Like, what have you taken away from him, I guess, is the best way to ask the question.
Definitely a lot of what I've gotten away from Coach Moore is definitely how to finish shots. I mean, Tristan, you've watched him wrestle. You see his style. You've seen everything that he used to do at Virginia and Penn State. Real like funky guy on his feet. He would hit some big moves, but I mean, just wrestling with him over the past 5 years, which is crazy to say that I'm a fifth-year senior now, but wrestling with him over the past 5 years and his leg defense. I mean, you watch him wrestle, and you can go back through it right now and just search Scott Moore, and I mean, he would just let guys all over the country in on his legs and just do, like you said, all these funky, crazy moves. And you know, I kind of got better. You know, first thing you step in the room, wrestle Coach Moore, and you're getting beat up and you're getting thrown around and you're in positions that you don't even know what they are even considered to be called. But it's just the constantly just being able to wrestle with him. And I think the biggest thing that Coach Moore has made me better, and definitely the team, is anyone that wrestles with him. Like I said, you really just got to focus on your finishing fast, finishing quick, and just exploiting your opponent fast, because if you don't, then yeah, you're going to end up on your back in a funky position. So I would say the things that Coach Moore has taught me the most is definitely how to finish a shot, for sure.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I remember growing up watching him wrestle, and like you said, guys would get in on a single, he would just drape over them like a spider and just tie them up, put them in some kind of crazy cradle or something. But yeah, nonetheless, Kyle, I want to talk to you about your NCAA tournament last year. So I'm always fascinated going through the NCAA tournaments and just watching guys who are either unseeded or, you know, not top 10 seeds even, who just kind of shocked the wrestling world, for lack of a better term. I'm fascinated to know what goes through your mindset through that whole tournament. So you come in there, you know, obviously you're expecting big things out of yourself. I'm sure Scott was and your teammates, but people outside of Pennsylvania wrestling are looking at that bracket, and they're not penciling you necessarily into the quarterfinals. They don't have you majoring the 4 seed, Josh Albert. They don't have you, you know, beating Cade Brock in the blood round. What went through your mind going to that NCAA tournament? You obviously didn't feel any pressure. You just lit people up out there.
That's a great question, and like I would agree with what you said too. I didn't really put the pressure on myself. What I kind of went from my perspective is, all I would do, especially at nighttime when I was at the tournament, the whole week before, the whole month before, but all I did was kind of visualize my success a lot, like just a lot of mental reps, getting my hand raised. And it's funny that you bring up the Cade Brock match, because I remember, like, I'm in a house with 3 of my teammates, so Corey Hazel and Brandon Liverfito, but I just remember kind of like being around all the time and just being like, yeah, like, I know I can be an All-American and I know that I can accomplish my goals, but I'm going to have to beat Cade Brock. And it was kind of weird that I put his name in my mouth, but I just knew that I was going to have to beat someone of his caliber. So what the real difference was is, especially the first couple of years, I just felt like I was a little bit timid at the stage. Like, it didn't like feel right to me. Like, I was just there, and I like you said, it was kind of like a seeding thing. I didn't really like fully believe in what I was capable of. But this year I came in, put a lot more time into my training, a lot more time into my mental reps. And that's really what made the difference in my run last year. And it's definitely all those factors are just going to be everything that's going to make the run this year just as special, just making sure that I continue to stay on the same path and just keep working hard and keep getting them mental reps every day. So that's what I would say would be just being mental reps.
Side note, I know Tristan loves a good humble brag, but you ended up winning a contest with I coach at North Allegheny, our boosters. We did like a contest who could pick the most All-Americans, and I was the only one that picked you, and I ended up winning by one person. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
That's amazing. Yeah. My next question actually is kind of what you just led into, Kyle. I just want to know about what's your mindset like going into this year? Does it change at all now knowing that, you've been the guy that's cracked the podium and now, you're not necessarily the underdog anymore? I know some guys really like wrestling in that underdog role. You kind of transition now into you're the guy and other people are going to be, the freshman or the sophomore coming out of nowhere trying to beat Kyle Shoop, the returning All-American. So does that change your mindset or your training or anything, or do you just kind of approach it the same way this year?
I don't really want to change anything like too drastically. I want to continue to just be on the same path. But if anything, me All-American last year just kind of put that target on my back. It just kind of pushes me to go a little bit further, a little bit harder. And this year I'm focused a lot on myself, but like this is my last year too for our team. So I want to see all of us do well. So just really focusing in, making sure I'm working out with the best guys that I can. And I don't really see too much of a mindset change, but if anything this year to achieve my goal of being a national champion, I definitely think that of the mental reps I did last year to become a national champion, I need to increase them at least 3 or 4 more times throughout the course of the year. And just like I said, continue my workout schedule. Like most days I'm working out at least 2 times, sometimes 3, but just keeping the consistency, because if I step off the gas, that's when everyone's going to make their gains on me. So I would say my mindset doesn't really change too much. I kind of enjoy the pressure. It's made it a little bit more fun, and just kind of the fact that, well, I did this great thing, it's time to step back out and, solidify my name as one of the best within my hometown and Lock Haven. So definitely hasn't really changed anything too much, I would say.
Sticking on that, obviously last year you're a bit of an underdog, and this year I don't think anyone has you ranked number 1 to win it, and that's obviously your goal. How do you embrace the underdog role that Lock Haven has? Is that anything that comes to mind, or do you really dig into that and love wrestling those big schools like Rutgers, North Carolina? Obviously, some of these other schools you've wrestled at the tournaments. Cade Brock, obviously. Does that ever come to mind?
Yeah.
Do you give that any thought?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, if anything, it makes me appreciate being here a little bit more, because just like pardon me, but like a lot of those big schools get their butt wiped. Like they're getting everything handed to them. Like for me to do what I do, and for me to go out there and compete with people in the Big Ten, Pac-12, and all the other conferences, that just speaks volumes of not only me, but my teammates, my coaching staff. But it does. I like it because it kind of puts a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I just don't think that some of those guys are really ready for it. Those guys think that, we got someone from Lock Haven, like it's a joke. But like, I've just been, my whole goal, my whole career is to just prove that I belong at the highest level, and again to become an All-American and national champion. And now that I've had success, I just feel like I'm in the perfect spot. So definitely, I would agree with everything I said, but I would agree with that. So
that really is interesting when you put that in perspective, Kyle. I mean, in most sports, a team like Lock Haven isn't going up against Oklahoma State in anything. I mean, they're so far apart in division and conference and size of school. Only in a sport like wrestling, where Pennsylvania is so dominant, do you have a team like Lock Haven that has such a rich history that is now, on the rise, as you guys say. And, you have guys like you and Chance out there, and Ronnie Perry in the NCAA finals, going out and taking down guys from Big 10, Big 12 schools. That really does put a lot in perspective. And that kind of leads me to my next question too. You guys are now part of the MAC conference. Is that right?
Yeah. We just merged this year, but for you guys, from the perspective of the fans, what that's really going to do is it's going to be more tournament spots, and B, our personal schedule doesn't really change too much. So we're going to be wrestling the EWL's schedule, like the EWL team schedule, pretty much similar to last year. Couple changes like Old Dominion. I'm trying to think just a couple other schools, but yeah, definitely excited. The EWL was a great conference and it was great to grow in there for 3 years, but really exciting opportunity, especially for us rising seniors, me, DJ Fellman, Corey Hazel, and Alex Clucker. Definitely a big chance right now that we see to advance and become conference champions this year, first conference champions for us at Lock Haven in the MAC. So,
yeah, I wrestled at Old Dominion, so as a team from the East Coast that kind of midway through my career, we were in the CAA, which is now defunct in college wrestling, but we merged into the MAC. So I've kind of already gone through that transition, and it was definitely interesting because at that time, Northern Iowa was still in it, Mizzou, you got a bunch of Midwest teams, so I'm definitely excited for you guys to take that leap too. I mean, I don't know how much your schedule will change in comparison to how ours did, but we had a lot more flights out to the Midwest. It definitely threw a little bit of a wrench in the ball game where our matches used to be, just driving up to Drexel in Philadelphia or something like that. But now, we were flying across the country to go wrestle Eastern Michigan or Northern Illinois. But yeah, I'm definitely excited for you guys and also tough competition out there. So good luck to you guys out there, obviously.
Oh yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, like I said, yeah, I'm interested to see how the travel is going to be. That's going to be probably the roughest thing. But as of right now, our hardest trip, I think we have a 3-dayer down in Virginia. I forget. I know it's Mason and ODU, and then I forget who else we wrestled. But yeah, like you said, it's going to be interesting. We're going to be adding a little bit more travel time, but I believe this year we're only going to be flying, I think, 2 or 3 times just because of the distance. But I think we fly Nationals, Conference, and then maybe Scuffle. So not too. And like you said, because the MAC changed and there's no Midwest, the biggest trip is going to be down through Virginia. That's going to be a grinder there, but that's going to be about it.
Rob, I'm just going to jump in here for one last question for Kyle, and then you can take over after that. My last question for you, Kyle, is I don't know that people are necessarily keeping this statistic in their head, but Lock Haven, not only is their team just really coming up since Scott Moore's taken over, but if you go back and look through the NCAA brackets, just in the last 3 or 4 years alone, we're talking Dan Neff at 149. We're talking Ronnie Perry in the NCAA finals at 149. You're an All-American at 141, and Chance is obviously an All-American at 165. In this kind of middleweight core here from 141 to 165 range, maybe not coincidental that that's around the weight that Scott Moore wrestled, but you guys are kind of just every single year you've got kind of a streak going of somebody stepping up, next man up kind of mentality. And now you got Ronnie Perry on staff. So how do you just see the progression of these middleweights at Lock Haven especially? The whole team is really on the come up, but the middleweights especially, it seems like you guys have a firm grip on just sending people to the tournament and doing big things.
Yeah, I would just say it's the culture, and a lot of it is just, all of you got me, you got Werner, Fellman, myself, Port, and then Clucker at 57, and then Caleb Clymer at 65. But we got a tough core group of guys, but it's not only just them. We got a lot of really good practice partners. We got kind of a little bit of a swell of guys among that weight. And like you said, Scott Moore definitely helping us out in the room, and Nate Carr. Nate Carr does an excellent job too, keeping us good on our feet, keeping us light on our feet. And like you said, adding Ronnie Perry to staff. I just think it's really honestly just been, just a big culture thing. They walk in, all these freshmen are coming here, with that aspect, that chip on their shoulder to become All-Americans. And it's been great. And you can definitely, like you said, you've seen the progression over the past couple of years. But one name I do want to put in both of you guys' head, a little bit of an upper weight this year for my team that I think is going to do a lot of damage. We got Corey Hazel returning at 184. So he's definitely one of those guys that's going to be danger on the podium as well for the upper weights, and also Jared Seegers, our returner, at 74. Both guys poised to make an All-American run in their last season. So definitely, just like you said, it's kind of because we have a lot of people walking in to something that's good already. We have a good work ethic. All those guys know what to expect. And but yeah, I would just say that it's Coach Moore, good recruiting, Coach Carr, keeping us accountable, good footwork, a lot of good drills, and Perry, Perry's great, just having him to wrestle around with all of us. He's close to our weight. So definitely a good system at Lock Haven right now for the lower weights.
Kyle, it's not normal that you hear someone like yourself shouting out all his teammates, especially the bigger guys. Almost seems like you have an interest in coaching. You're looking at the whole team. Is that something you're hoping to do after college? Do you want to keep competing, or do you want to use your degree? What's the plan, or have you not gotten that far yet?
I thank you for asking that question, because it's all kind of about networking and stuff to get your name out there and just kind of let people know what the plan is. But definitely want to coach Division I college right out of the gate, and just looking to just improve, do the best I can this year, just get my accolades up, hopefully win 3-time Tech Fall Award, another All-American at least, maybe national championship, just putting the work in. But yeah, I mean, I just, coming from this place, it's so similar, it's kind of similar to Boiling Springs, but I just want to kind of remain humbled, and, a lot of these guys are my friends, and man, they're putting the same work in as me, and I just want to see everyone be on the same page, because this year, really big for us, definitely a top 10 finish this season. If we can get all 5, I think we could have 5 starting seniors All-American. If we can do that, we can become a top 10 team. So definitely want to keep those guys in the loop and keep that up.
Great, man. We certainly appreciate having you on. We're going to be, obviously watching you guys close, and maybe have you on later this year. Tristan, you got anything you want to say before we let Kyle go?
Obviously, I'll just say best of luck to you, Kyle. I'll also say, hey, if you got a future in podcasting, maybe a pretty well-spoken interview from the ones I've had. So nice job. Thanks for joining us, and we really appreciate your time. And big things for Lock Haven, and big things from you this year, bud. Thank you.
Yeah, hey, thank you guys, and I'll be in touch with that. Definitely would be interested. I just want to make sure that after I'm done with this sport, I still got a lot left to give, so I don't want to walk away from it completely just yet. So, yeah, and thank you both. That was a great interview. So I'll be in touch. Let me know whenever you want me back on the show.
All right, we just got done talking to Lock Haven All-American from 2019, Kyle Shoop. Kyle, we really appreciate him taking his time to come on the program. That's going to about wrap it up for us here on the PA Power College Wrestling Podcast. That was episode 2. Thanks, everybody, for stopping in. Next week, with episode 3, we will be previewing the remaining Pennsylvania college wrestling teams, as well as recapping some inter-squad wrestle-off results that went on around the country over this next week, as well as, it's very hard to believe this, I feel like I need some kind of drum roll, previewing the first weekend of competition, as next Friday, I think, officially kicks off some dual meet action, and then next Saturday and Sunday there's some opens going on around the country where PA natives and PA universities will be in action already. So that being said, we will close up episode 2. As always, thanks for tuning in to the PA Power College Wrestling Podcast. Give us a like and a share on social media. Tell your friends, and thanks for listening. For Rob Waltko, I'm Tristan Warner. See you next week.